What's up, everybody? Thank you for joining us on episode 7 of the LAN Partners Podcast. My name is Connor, and with me is Dave.
Hello.
And Matt.
How's it going?
So we're getting back to normal this week. Last week we did a full E3 review. If you want to go back and check out that episode, please do. It's a good one. We're going to go back to just our normal structure of doing some reviews and discussion topic. We're going to lead the episode off with an Around the Horn segment where we go around and just talk about what games we've currently been playing. We did that about our second or third episode, so a lot has changed since then. I got a review of Nier Automata. Matt's going to review Pokemon Wire X for us. And our discussion for today is, are digital games the future? Are we into the digital games? A couple news stories we want to get to, and our list for today is the top 3 wrestling games of all time. We are just 3 guys who have full-time jobs, families, and other hobbies, but we also love to game. We just want to share with you our experiences playing new and old games in case you're in the same spot as us where your gaming time is limited and you need some recommendations. If you're somebody who can relate to us, please download the podcast by Apple app, Stitcher, or go on iTunes and hit subscribe. That way you get our weekly episodes uploaded to you every Thursday. If you have questions, discussion topics, or list ideas, maybe there's a game you want us to review, please message us on Facebook or send us an email, thelandpartners@gmail.com. Or if you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment. We now also, over the weekend, we created a LAN Partners Twitch page where we've been uploading some game footage that we've been playing, or we go stream live. So get on Facebook, get on Twitter, so you can get those notifications when we start streaming or we post some videos up for you to watch. It's a lot of fun when we get on to Twitch. So we're going to go ahead and kick it off and go around the horn. Matt, why don't you lead us off with what you've currently been playing?
So I was playing Persona 5, which I said in the first ever podcast of the LAN Partners. And I think around that time I was at about 20 hours. And now I'm at 38 hours. So I'm about double the time of where I was at that time. Not that significant, though, if anyone knows. Like I said in the first podcast, the game is about 80 to 100 hours, we're being told by different review sites and other people who have played the game. I think How Long to Beat, that website, it says it's about 80 to 100 hours, so I believe it. So I'm only about halfway, it looks like, in terms of hours. I don't know if I'm moving any faster or slower than most people do, but I kind of made a promise with myself that I would take a break after I made it to this next dungeon that I just got to, just because I didn't want to get hit by fatigue. I love the game, I just didn't want the time to kind of take me down mentally. So I moved on. I've been playing Yakuza 0, which I know Connor's been playing. He's a lot farther than I am, and he's enjoying it a lot, but I'm also enjoying it a lot as well. And I actually just the other day picked up Titanfall 2 on the PC, which Dave actually just completed on Xbox One, and he's the one who kind of pushed me over the fence to pick up Titanfall 2 because I was on the fence, and then Dave said it was really, really awesome, and he was surprised by how great it was. So yeah, that tipped me over the edge, and I ended up picking it up. So that's what I've been playing.
Yeah, I think all of us kind of got the Titanfall bug almost to see if Dave's really telling the truth about how good this game is. I think Matt got the bug. Now I'm about to get the bug. Our buddy
Tony. Yeah. Tony just got the game, and he took a picture of it. Tell me I'm wrong.
Yep, he proved it.
That moves on to me. Since our last update, I finished up Nier Automata. That was a pretty lengthy game, but once I finished it, I felt like I wasn't really going to play it again, so I traded it in, got about $33 back for the trade-in, so I picked up the Kingdom Hearts Collection, which is 6 games in one. There's been a lot of uproar about Kingdom Hearts in our group because our buddy Tony also finished that game, and there's been a lot of talks. We'll get to that in the next few weeks when I give my review on that game. I'm getting close, like Matt said, to beating Yakuza 0. I'm about 31, 32 hours in. I played a lot of side quests early on, but now I'm kind of at that point where I just want to start trucking through the story because every chapter ends on like some crazy cliffhanger where I'm like, I got to go to the next chapter. I got to keep playing and see what happens. I can't just stop. So I've been playing a lot of that. I'm still hacking away at BioShock 2, not enjoying it, not as good as the first one, but I know the prize at the end of the road is BioShock 3, and I've heard that is a lot better. So I want to go ahead and get to that. Matt and I picked up the DLC Dark Souls. It's not going very well. If you know anything about the development company of From Software, the creators of Dark Souls and Bloodborne, they do not make it easy to play their DLC, and it's getting
Not at
very
all.
frustrating. Last night, Matt and I tried for about an hour trying to play the DLC, and we were unsuccessful, and I said, I give up, going to Kingdom Hearts. So that's me since our last update, and that leaves us with Dave. Dave, what have you been up to?
Finished Metal Gear Solid 5. Finished Titanfall 2, as Matt had mentioned before. Always ongoing with NBA 2K17 with my buddies. We're trying to rope Connor into that, but he's being a little reluctant to join. And you can go ahead and watch our video on Twitch. Connor and I actually played a little bit of NBA 2K17 for the first time. We tried to Twitch stream from the same place for some ice cream. So delicious ice cream. Go check that out. Also, I'm gonna be looking into high stakes, not steaks, ice cream. Tomb Raider is probably gonna be my next one, maybe, but Outlast. I know that I was watching another YouTuber and he was really into Outlast and kind of convinced me to play Outlast. So Tomb Raider or Outlast will probably be my next one.
Yeah, and that reminds me that Dave said that I also put some Kingdom Hearts footage up on our Twitch page, about an hour of it. So I put that up on the Twitch page. Check it out. And I know Matt has been posting some videos. Matt, what have you been posting?
I have about an hour, a little over an hour video of Titanfall 2 on the PC. So if anyone's looking into some gameplay, it's like one of the earlier levels in the game.
Yeah, so please get on our Twitch page. Also follow us on Facebook and Twitter so you get our notifications of when we put up some videos. That leads us right into our reviews. I'll go ahead and start us off with my Nier Automata review. This is a big one for me. It took me about 30 hours to play this game. It was a lengthy game. You could easily turn this into 45 hours. The publisher were Square Enix, and if you know anything about Square Enix, that's Final Fantasy, that's all the Kingdom Hearts, and a couple other titles. But the developer was Platinum Games. Pretty unknown developer if you're not familiar with Bayonetta 1 and 2. They are developers of that. So this game, Nier Automata, was a game that jumped right off the sheet for me because I loved Bayonetta 1 and 2, so I'm like, I got to check out every game that Platinum Games has. I want to play this game. This was released earlier in March this year. So a little bit about the game. It's set thousands of years from now where humans and machines are both at war with each other. So what happened was the humans got pushed back to the moon, and their only way to survive was they created androids to fight for them. So you play as these two androids that are sent down to Earth to fight against the machines. And the story is really good. The way the game is designed is that it's a third person, it's open world, it's an RPG game. So that's just a little about the game. A couple things I liked. Like I mentioned, the outline of the story. I don't want to say too much about the story, but I thought the story was awesome. For a game like this, for a 30-hour game, it's hard to create a story that's going to keep you into it and compelled for the whole gameplay. But this game did. The way the story moved and the structure, which leads me to the next thing about my likes, is the structure of the game was awesome. I've never played anything like it. It was where you play multiple times through the game. So like the first 10 hours, you play as one character. When you beat it as that character, you go back all the way to the beginning and play basically the same story, but as a different character. So you see two perspectives, because there's going to be, the main characters are 2B and 9S. So you play as 2B first, and then you go back and play as 9S. And then what happens is you'll see different angles of the story. But after your first two playthroughs, which would probably take you about 15, 16 hours, because I think the second one was a little bit quicker. After those first two playthroughs, you get launched into like what happens after that. So the story is really confusing at first. Like everything's kind of just puzzled together. You're trying to just piece together all the information. So it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. But after you get finished with playing as like the fourth or fifth character, which is the official end after the fifth playthrough, they call it. But that's when it officially ends, and that's when it all clicks and ends just masterfully, and it's really great. The upgrading system, like I said, it's an RPG. It was a really cool upgrading system. Since you're an android, you're basically a computer. So you get these chips, and each chip is worth a certain amount of space in your computer drive. So like if you want the ability to see your enemy's health gauge, there's a chip for that, and it costs a certain amount of space. So if you don't want that, and you want more space for other abilities, then you can do that. So it's kind of like, what do you want? What's important to you? So I thought the chip system was really cool. Never saw anything like that. A big thing I took from this game was the amazing action sequences. This is definitely a platinum game based on the action sequences that I saw, because I played Bayonetta 1 and 2, and I saw a lot of that in the action sequences where you're just fighting off waves and waves of enemies, and the combat is tons of fun. You can dodge, you can do different attacks. You sometimes kind of get the God of War bug where you're just hitting the same combos over and over again, but it doesn't take away from the fun. I always had a great time. So that is something that was really cool to me. And towards like the first playthrough you play as like kind of a normal combat style, and then the second playthrough you play as a droid, which is like I can't remember the exact name of what they would call it in the game, but you have the ability to hack things, so you start to hack enemies and stuff like that. So I saw a lot of hacking in the game, which was tons of fun because the hacking mini games are awesome, not just like boring Watch Dogs types of mini games, but it makes the gameplay tons of fun and changes it up when you're like 20 hours in. So that's awesome. A couple things I didn't like was the open world aspect of the game. It kind of felt pointless at times. I felt like they didn't need to make it open world. I felt like they gave in to the buzz about open world games. I mean, look at all the open world games that came out this year: Horizon Zero Dawn, Legend of Zelda, Yakuza, just to name a few right there. That just open world, and they didn't need to make this open world. All the side quests were basic fetch quests, nothing too crazy when it came to the open world aspect. And another dislike I had was you have a pod with you the whole game. The pod is extremely overpowered. You can just hold down R1 and you're constantly just rattling off bullets at people, and it helps a lot, but I felt like some tougher battles could have been... I kind of like the feeling of failing a couple times and making it tough and making you have to think, but I felt like the pod really canceled some of that, like, oh, I'm about to die here, because it was so overpowered. And the environment was a little lazy, like the open world I was saying. It was like a lot of the same types of buildings, a lot of the same types of cars. I sent a video to Dave one time when I was playing, and there was an invisible wall, and my character is literally just running into this invisible wall that shouldn't have even been there. So that got a little annoying, but I'm not too big into graphics, so it wasn't a big deal to me. So overall, I'm going to give this game a 9. I thought it was amazing. I loved it. I couldn't have got enough of it. I'm so glad the way the whole game was designed. It's $36 right now used at GameStop, which is an absolute steal for this type of game. You get 30 hours. If you want to play 50 hours, you can. So it's an absolute steal. So please pick it up. There was just something special about this game to me that I felt like I haven't seen in 10, 15 years. I felt like a lot of the PS2 games gave us this like originality where it was so new to us and like, oh, I've never seen that before. But we haven't really seen much of that since then. But I think this game did a good job of bringing a new aspect of doing this multiple playthroughs, giving us the hacking system. So I thought it was awesome. I really dug this game, and I really recommend if you're looking for a kind of a more action game, this is the game to go to, and it's really got a great story. So moving on to a different console. This was on the PS4, by the way. Forgot to mention that. So that's a PS4 game. Matt is going to go ahead and tell us all about Pokemon Y.
Okay, so Pokemon. So most people would know Pokemon. When they release Pokemon, they usually have two together. So this is no different. It's Pokemon X and Y. And basically, for those who maybe aren't well attuned to Pokemon, basically the only difference usually tends to just be there's different Pokemon or different high level rare Pokemon in each game, and that's kind of what differentiates them. So then if you pick up Pokemon X, your buddy picks up Pokemon Y, and you guys can trade Pokemon that you can't get in your game, and you can give them ones they can't get in their game. So that's kind of the fun for that. So Pokemon X and Y came out October 4th, 2013, so it's been almost 4 years now. Came out on the Nintendo 3DS, developed by Game Freak, who's the same developer that's done all the Pokemon games. So the interesting thing about this one is that this was the first Pokemon to actually have a 3D look. So it was actually in 3D models of characters in the game world. So up until this point, all of them were still that old style kind of Game Boy looking 2D pixel graphics. And this one had the first 3D look. And I do not believe the game let you use the 3D on the 3DS, though, because it just killed the frame rate. So they decided to kind of take it out of the game. It's a pretty lengthy one. I want to say most Pokemon games, depending on how fast people go through it, but usually the story is about 20 to 25. This game will probably set you about 30 to 35 hours. That's how long it took me to beat it. The new things about this game to note is that it's a lot faster paced in terms of how you get started. So usually, traditionally in Pokemon games, you wake up at home and you got to talk to mom, head over and pick out your Pokemon. It's kind of a slower moving, but this game gets you off to using different Pokemon a lot more quickly. And I'll get into some of the more fine tunings of the fast pacing when I talk about my pros and cons. One of the new things, or not new things, but one of the more refined features was that you could use the online features of this game. So you could use the online features to trade with people and train and do different little kind of features that they had set up for this game. And the big one for this one too is this is the first Pokemon that you could actually customize your character. So you could actually choose different skin tones and different types of apparel for your avatar. So you weren't not everyone just looked like that standard Ash or whatever character they're giving you in that version of Pokemon. You could actually kind of switch it up a little bit and make it unique to what you wanted. And then the other notable thing that was new in this one is what they called Mega Evolutions. So basically what you could do is once per battle, if your certain Pokemon allowed it, you could have him go into this Mega Evolution, which essentially changed some of their properties obviously you have the fire and water Pokemon and grass and things like that. So an example would be someone that everyone knows is Charizard. So he's a fire type Pokemon, obviously. So when you use your Mega Evolution, he keeps his fire type, but he also turns into a dragon type. So he loses his weakness to water, which is actually a huge advantage, obviously, because he would normally be weak to water. Some things that I liked about the game is that obviously it's Pokemon. If you love Pokemon, you're going to get that same just charming, smooth gameplay, kind of that Pokemon addiction of seeing what Pokemon you can catch, training them, making them evolve. So that's still there. That's all there. All that gameplay you would expect from a Pokemon game is still there. The next thing is the ease of movement. So this might sound weird, but in this Pokemon, instead of just walking and you're kind of on a grid of walking where, you can only move left, up, right, or down, you can, pretty early on in the game, you actually get roller skates that you can use that actually gets you around the game world way faster than you would if you were just walking, which is just handy for people because everyone that's played Pokemon before, they kind of get the deal. They just want to catch Pokemon and train them. They don't want to mess around with like slow moving. So I thought that was really nice. And then obviously the progression, you just can't beat it. There's no better feeling than, your Pokemon leveling up and you getting your badges, facing the gym trainers, moving on to the next one. It's just a nice sense of progression. The system still works. Some things I didn't like about the game, and it's not even that it was bad per se, but it's still that same kind of story with Pokemon. It's just you going against your rival, trying to take down, some evil organization, or then you just getting your badges, moving from gym to gym. So it's that same formula. So you can kind of take it or leave it for what you want. I'm a little tired of that same formula. I'm hoping that, in the future they can kind of mess with that a little bit more. Different thing too, another nitpicky thing, I guess, is the AI. So if you're fighting a battle and you lose that battle, if you go back to that same person, they're going to have the exact same Pokemon. So all you need to know is that, okay, this guy has fire Pokemon. So next time I go to face him, I'll make sure my water Pokemon are strong or that they're in the front line. So they don't necessarily like have any counters to any of your moves or anything like that. So I think that's something they can work on. And the fighting can get a little bit repetitive. So what I mean by that is that when you're going through some of the more climactic battles where you're just kind of wandering through fields and fighting trainers, sometimes you're so overpowered in those games where you're just fighting them and it's just more or less you just clicking the same button over and over just to get through the fight because you already know the pattern of moves that you have to do to defeat these Pokemon. So that can get a little bit repetitive. But to each their own, but that's how I felt about it. I ended up giving the game an 8 out of 10. I thought it was a great game. Like I said, it holds up the Pokemon formula. It looks great in 3D, with the characters being 3D models. So I thought that was a nice touch. Knowing Nintendo, we all know Nintendo, they do not enjoy dropping the price of their games. So this game you can still find for $40. You can find it pre-owned at GameStop. I'm looking right now for $30. So this game came out 4 years ago, and you're still paying close to retail on it. So I know that's not ideal, but I guess that's Nintendo for you. But yeah, that's my review of Pokemon X and Y.
All right. And in a couple weeks, Dave is going to be giving us a review on Pokemon, was it Sun and Moon, I believe? If I'm not mistaken, I think it's Sun and Moon.
I thought we agreed on maybe Red, like the original Red. I don't know. I'll take a look.
We'll talk about it. But so our discussion topic for today is the digital games. Are they the future? So digital games, we're going to break this up in two different discussions. The first one being, are we into the digital games? Like, do we even buy into digital? So Matt, tell us why you buy so many games digitally.
So yeah, I think I'm going to be on the opposite end of this discussion, but I enjoy digital games, and I understand the argument of, well, you can't trade it in and all that, but I think for me, it is just a huge convenience factor of being able to just download that game, being able to pull it up whenever you want and play it. And not that I'm a lazy person or anything, but you don't have to change out any discs. You can just go through your dashboard and pick up the game, turn it on, and it's just a convenience. It's an ease of access of the game. So I think for the future, I know we're talking about the future of digital games as well, so I'll get into that later when we get into that. But yeah, I think just buying digitally, it's just nice to have that at my fingertips right away. I think that's just, I know a lot of times when you buy digitally, you're still having to pay retail price, whereas if you went to GameStop or something to get the disc, you might get a discount, or it's just a lot cheaper because you're picking up the actual disc. But for me, sometimes it just seems like the better option, and I think sometimes it's worth it to just have it right there and not have to go out to the store, especially if you just don't have time to get out to the store, you don't feel like going out to the store, or sometimes you get some inkling late at night where you just want a game and you want to play it. You can just download it right there and you're good to go. So I really think moving forward that's probably going to be the future.
So Dave, if you go out and buy a game today, are you buying digital or are you going to buy a hard copy? Also, what about tomorrow, aka the future?
For today, if I'm going to go out and buy a game, it kind of depends. Right now, like Matt was saying, games on disc, especially games you're not really too sure if you're going to like them or not, I like to kind of go disc based on those because, number one, if I really don't like it and I'm never going to play it again, maybe not even finish it, like, for example, Tom Clancy's The Division, then I would like to have that disc to trade in so that I can get some money back for it, etc. However, I have been noticing in myself a trend of purchasing games digitally when I know I'm going to like them. So, for example, Mario Odyssey, I'm buying digitally immediately because I wanted just, not only the convenience of having it day one, but not having to carry around an extra game disc or have to store it somewhere on a shelf that my wife doesn't want me to display it on because there's 100 games on the shelf. A digital kind of negates that and makes it not only easier, like Matt said, to do, but also easier to store and manage because there's nothing really to store and manage. It's digital. It's connected to you. If you get a new video game system, boom, you log in with your account and you re-download your games. It's not a big deal. So today, if there's a game I'm not sure about, hard copy. But if there's a game I know I'm going to like, 100% digital, I would say.
So, Dave, where do you see it going?
I see it going digital pretty soon, 100% of the time. And I think it's kind of funny that Microsoft caught a lot of heat for this in 2013 when they talked about the Xbox One and how it was originally not going to have any discs and be DRM, and everyone freaked out like it was the most insane idea in the world. Mind you, PC had already been doing that for years
Right.
at that point, and PC gamers seem to be doing just fine with their digital games. So I'm not really too sure about the backlash to that. I was more upset that I wasn't going to be able to use my Turtle Beach headset with their new controller inputs. So I think digital games are just, it's any minute now it's going to happen. And that's it. That's the future. You're not going to see those hard copies.
Well, before I lay some stats on you guys, and these stats are pretty jaw-dropping, let me just say that I am 100% against digital games. I can't stand buying digital games. I love to trade in my games and get that money back, and I do not want anything to do with digital games. I especially don't like it when you go on the PSN network or the PlayStation Store or the Xbox Store, and they're telling you these games are 50% off, but they're marking them up at $60 and then putting 50% off when these games were out 3 or 4 years ago, and they should already be $20. Like, it shouldn't even say 50% off from 60. Like, come on, this is 4 years ago. Let's move on. So here's some stats. Now, I found these stats on one website, and then I didn't believe them, so I looked at a different survey, and it had the exact same results. So this is from the ESA, which is the Entertainment Software Association. Let me tell you what happened in 2009. In 2009, the number of physical games was at 80%. So the percentage of physical copies bought was at 80%, and the percentage of digital games was at 20%. That's 2009. Let's fast forward to 2016. In 2016, the percentage of physical games bought was 26%, and the percentage of digital games was 74%. Before I give you the little tiny writing there, what do you guys make of that?
I think it just shows that people are making that move, because I think back in 2009, I know that wasn't that long ago, but I think now there's a real case to be made for people having access to faster internet speeds and being able to download games at a faster rate, because I think that was a big turnoff when it was you were going to download a game and you realize it's 10 gigs or something, and you're like, this is going to take 2 days to download or something like that. And I think now, I can download a 50 gig game in a couple hours. So I think that's been a big change. I think that's just, people want that convenience, that ease of access.
Dave, do you see anything in these statistics here?
Yeah, so let me drop some knowledge on you for a second here. So I looked up this topic a little bit too, and I know exactly what you're gonna spin this topic on its head with, and I'm gonna buzzkill your
ruin my day
here right now.
You're gonna ruin my day.
So I looked up individual developers, big developers like AAA developers, and what their percent digital sales versus physical sales were, and there's not a lot of information out there on it because it's so hard to track certain sales in certain situations. But here's EA. EA reported that 49% of their revenue came from digital sales in Q1 2016, and 51% of their sales were disc. Now, this lends me to believe, 2009, digital sales, we're looking at smartphones starting to make their appearances at this time. We're looking at tablets. The iPad, I believe, came out in like 2010. And so this massive amount of digital sales in games, when the ESA or whoever does these studies, they probably include cell phone games. They probably include apps by like third-party people that cost $1 on iTunes. They probably include all of that information. They're not talking about the same games that you and I and Matt are talking about. They're talking about Facebook games, things like that. Those all count as digitally downloaded digital media games to them. And I think that's where the numbers get skewed a little bit, because it's definitely not 29% in the console market of disc-based games. I mean, that has to include PC. That's got to include cell phones. That's got to include all that stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and, just by the numbers I looked at with EA, say there's your dun-dun-dun moment about why these numbers could be. Am I wrong? Tell me I'm wrong.
And that's exactly what I was going to read off. Because when I looked at these stats, I'm like, I'm not buying this. How did it go from 80% to 26% in that span of years? So I'm looking and I'm reading, and it says,
exist.
yeah, exactly. And it says, exact quote, these include full game digital downloads, subscription to services like Xbox Live or PS Plus, DLC, mobile app downloads, and others. So it's counting those people, those 80-year-old grandmas playing Candy Crush, buying all those downloads. So that's
ad-free Scrabble.
Yeah, I mean, that's where all these numbers are being inflated. So I think this is a very deceiving and scary survey because I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do without GameStop. I don't know where my trade-ins are going to go.
You know what? Let me. You're posing that question. Let me tell you exactly what's going to happen here. So I did a little bit more research, and I said to myself, there's got to be a way. There's got to be a middle ground. It's going to go all digital at some point, but somebody's got to figure out a way to just knock off these physical games once and for all. And I came across something on Forbes. It was a study done at the University of Toronto, and the study was done such that taking into account video game developer costs, what their overhead is, how much it costs to put discs out, how much money it costs for a digital game versus how much money it costs for a physical game. And like Matt was saying, right now they charge the same amount for each. But the reason they charge the same amount for each one is because they can. Physical sales are still a thing. And so if they can tap into that extra $20 that goes straight into the developers' pockets because they no longer have to print the disc or anything like that, why not? But what was interesting about this study is they said that if digital games disappeared today, you would see games drop by 33% in price, brand new, and developers would still make a profit. And not only would they make a profit, they would make a larger profit than they currently do, selling it at $40 for a brand new game. So I don't know about you guys, but if brand new games digitally were $40, if I'm buying a game from GameStop and I'm only getting like 25 of it back, if you knock off that $20 immediately and say I can keep this game forever, that's probably what I'm going to do. And judging by sales records, they actually found in this study that dropping that to the magic number of $40 would not only cause a much larger population to purchase these games that once bought disc-based games, but it would be, like I said, so much so that developers and publishers would actually make more money per game selling them at $40 a piece. So I that got me really, really hopeful for the future of digital games. I do prefer them digitally, and I would 100% buy a game, $40, brand new, release that day. And I would way, way, way prefer that over buying a game for $60 and then selling it back. I'll take a $5 loss just for that convenience Matt was talking about.
Yeah.
Well, I think, too, what's happened is a lot of the game developers, because I know we're talking about developers and their sales and what they're making, I think that's what's going to really push digital sales as well, is because the developers, as consumers, we love going to GameStop because we can get this game for cheaper. But as a developer, they hate it because now someone else is getting to play their game for a fraction of what they wanted them to pay for it. So they're feeling like their work that they've done is not being accredited or being paid for. So I think the gaming developers as a whole are probably going to keep coming together and pushing digital sales so that they're making sure that they're getting their profit and their money that they did for their work.
Yeah, I think the future of digital is definitely going to take over at some point. It's just a matter of when, and I'm not on board. That's all I could say about that. I do not want all my games digitally because I want that money back. But if, like what Dave said, if that comes around, then we'll see. It's gonna be a couple changes coming down the line. So
we'll be talking about GameStop in the same way we currently talk about Blockbuster. Give it, you knew it. Give it 15 years, and we're gonna be like, hey, you remember when we used to go over to the GameStop and pick up the physical discs, the thingies, the circle things? Remember when we used to do that?
They were called discs.
Hey kids, this is a CD.
Yeah, this is a Blu-ray disc. We had a lot of conversations about these back in the day.
They will be extinct at some point. So we're gonna go ahead and close this thing down. Wrap up episode 7 with our list of top 3 wrestling games. I'm gonna go ahead and lead us off this week. My number 3 wrestling game is WWE 2K15. I really enjoyed that. Okay. It was one of the better WWE games currently. I think they got a lot of things right with that universe mode and everything. And my bachelor party and was tons of fun playing WWE all night, and all those parties we had playing WWE. It's a good one. Dave, what is your number 3?
My number 3, WWE 13. I believe CM Punk was on the cover of this
that's a
one.
CM
Yeah.
Punk cover.
That's
Yep,
right,
you're right.
And I believe it's also his second to last appearance in a WWE game, and I personally like that game better than 2K14. So
Second to
13.
last, or if that might be his last.
I think he might have been in the next one. I think
I'm not sure. I'll have to look.
14.
I don't think I had
yeah.
14. That's the one with Rock on the cover. I don't think I had that one.
Mm.
Matt, what is your number 3?
My number 3 is WCW NWO Revenge. So I wasn't a huge fan of WCW growing up, but I remember playing that game with one of my old friends that used to live close to me. We'd go over to each other's houses and we'd rent the game from a Blockbuster or something like that and play it. So I never actually owned it. I would just keep renting it, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's a good one. My number 2, Def Jam Vendetta. That game is amazing.
Okay.
PS2 classic. You wrestle as rappers like Redman, Method Man, Ludacris, DMX. It's so good. It plays like a WWE game. It's legitimate wrestling, but it's with rappers. How awesome is that? You're playing
It had a
as
story mode.
Yeah, it was amazing. You were some rapper where you have to take over Ludacris and DMX, and the tag team was Method Man and Redman. Oh, that game was great.
Throw him through a subwoofer.
Yeah, I would love to go back to that one. Dave, what is your number 2?
My number 2 is again another. Well, actually, 13 wasn't a 2K game. This is a 2K game. 2K16 is my number 2, and I just really enjoyed the roster. And we've played a ton of it, and it's one of our favorite games to play when we get together. And I just like it. It's a good feel.
Matt?
My number 2, these are all going to be old. My number 2 is a WWF WrestleMania 2000. So the reason I actually got this game is I was obsessed with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and I remember this game had the animation to his Stone Cold Stunner. They would make whoever you did the Stone Cold Stunner to do that kind of rock move where like he just ping pongs off the ropes and everything. So I just remember like thinking that was so cool.
Vince McMahon selling.
Yeah, that was like pretty much why I got it.
Am I up? Is it my turn? My number 1?
You're number 1.
All right, here we go. My number 1 is WCW NWO Revenge. Matt kind of stole the thunder on that one. I thought that was it was really from WCW World Tour, WCW NWO World Tour to Revenge was such a massive jump that Revenge was just so great. You have the Royal Rumble. I think you could have a 30-man. It was 20 or 30-man Royal Rumble in that one.
Yep.
And they have the names on it and the actual Nitro settings. I thought that game was amazing. So, Dave, what's your number 1?
I think it's really funny that we're probably all going to have the Aki Corporation number 1 wrestling games because they were the best. I mean, you can't argue with it. My number 1 is what I consider the most refined, and to my knowledge, their very last game, WWF No Mercy for N64. And it basically took all the games that these guys just mentioned and made it the absolute best possible game. The character creation, spot on. All the different types of matches, ladder matches, cage matches. You could be a referee with one of your friends, like fighting in a match, or 2 of your friends fighting each other, and you could be the ref and pull a classic, Shane O'Mac looking the other way. It was the best of all games, and not only that, but to my knowledge, again, it was only the first, maybe second game. I'm not sure, Matt, if 2000 had this, but you could fight your friends for belts and retain them.
Yep.
So you had championship matches, and you would just spend all night pretending to make wrestling pay-per-view events, and the main event was always that fatal 4-way with all your friends for the championship belt, and if they won it, you had to promise to let them keep it until the next time you guys played. It was the best one.
That's great. Matt, what's your number 1? Finish this off.
My number 1 is the same, WWF No Mercy, N64. That game was fantastic. I agree completely with everything Dave said. The only thing I'm going to add is that this game actually had a career story mode to it. And I think people forget that all the way back then it was already in the game. You could pick which title you wanted to go for. You could be any character you wanted to be on the roster. And then there would be interviews backstage and different things that would happen just kind of how it is today with the games now. So I got so wrapped up in that, getting belts for different characters.
That just reminded me, Triple H was one of my favorite wrestlers at the time, and this was also one of the only wrestling games where you could edit the appearance of the stock wrestlers, and so I was able to give Triple H his beard when he grew it, and for some reason I thought that was a deal breaker as well. I was like, all right, done. Give it the award, best of all time.
The stuff that impressed us back then.
Yeah.
So that was episode 7 of the LAN Partners Podcast. Remember to hit subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, whatever you got to do. Leave a comment. Find us on Facebook or Twitter. Follow us so you get all those Twitch notifications. Get all of our notifications of when we're streaming or post a video or whatever. Thank you so much for listening. See you next week.